we're starting to get a little bit of a clear picture, maybe a little bit on UCLA as we speak this morning. And we've crossed the halfway point threshold of the regular season. UCLA sits at 25th in the net. Now, the results-based metrics, because UCLA doesn't have a high inventory of games, it just has played fewer games than most other teams in power conferences because of its lengthy COVID pause, it still ranks well there. KPI, Kevin Pauga Index, which only evaluates teams based off of what's happened this season. Everything's in the rearview mirror. There is no predictive quality to it whatsoever. It says UCLA is the number 11 team in the country based off what it's done, and then strength of record, which is another very good empirical analysis tool that is results-based, has UCLA ninth. The predictive ones have started to fade a little bit on the Bruins here. 14, 15, or 16 in KenPom, Sagarin, and BPI as of this morning. I still think we need more. It was good on the Ducks. Dana Altman gets his 700th win. The Ducks had 6 players score in double figures, so led by Jacob Young had 23. So that's a bit more like it with Oregon. It's not a stunner that Oregon wins this game. Oregon was a team we expected to be a major player in the Pac-12. Hasn't been that to this point. But maybe this is going to be different. 84-81 in overtime. UCLA was fortunate to get it to the bonus session to begin with because, in fact, I think it was Young who had that brutal pass underneath his own basket that allowed UCLA to cut the margin from 6 all the way down to 0 in the final 33 seconds of regulation. So even getting it to the freebie session there for UCLA with no fans in attendance, which I think has something of an impact overall. But good on Oregon. UCLA is going to have a chance, obviously, play the way the Pac-12 goes. You've got the travel partner, so Oregon State will be next on Saturday. And I think the win's probably more about Oregon. But we have had a little bit of the Pac-12's top 3, 2 of the 3 at least, stumbling a bit. Arizona had no issues with Colorado on Thursday night, but earlier in the week, USC dropped from the ranks of the unbeaten. It actually kind of vomited on its sleeve for the first half of that game against Oregon State on Thursday before getting it together and winning by 10. But we've had UCLA and USC, which have separated themselves from the rest of the conference. Now they've taken on some losses. Maybe Oregon can make it a bit interesting there. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe chalk this up a little bit to the fact that UCLA also hadn't played in almost a month. This was its second game, and it takes a competitive loss nonetheless.
I believe it was their third game back. Third game back from a nearly 4-week COVID pause. You mentioned the lack of fans. I believe the number I saw was 119 relatives of coaches and players were allowed inside Pauley. That's it. And Mick Cronin was asked about it afterwards, and he said, it doesn't help, but I don't want to make excuses. But it's a real thing. Like having home court advantage in college basketball is a real thing. Watch Auburn play a home game. Tell me that doesn't matter. And watch Gonzaga play a home game. It matters. And when you suddenly don't have that, whatever gap might be there between you and your opponent is a smaller gap. You mentioned it's not a stunner that Oregon beat UCLA, and it's not in a broad sense. I mean, it's Oregon, it's Dana Altman, they're back-to-back Pac-12 outright champs. But this Oregon team was a 10-point underdog, and this Oregon team hasn't been very good. Now, they started 6-6 with losses to Stanford, Arizona State, St. Mary's, BYU. Also lost to Baylor and Houston. Obviously, nothing wrong with those, but a Stanford loss isn't great. Arizona State loss isn't great. They're now 10-6. But the resume is rough. 1-5 in the first 2 quadrants, and they've got that quad 3 loss to Arizona State at home. So maybe they're turning a corner a little bit. And long term, I don't think this is that big of a deal for UCLA, because I'm assuming it's a quad 3 loss now. That'll be a quad 2, as we move forward. Because I'm just going to assume Oregon's going to get better, and perhaps that blemish that looks not great today won't look as bad tomorrow. And I don't mean technically tomorrow, but, a month from now, 2 months from now. But, not a great development. And, from what I could tell, reading about it this morning and a box score, UCLA, it was just one missed opportunity after another, and they didn't get a lot from – Juzang was good. He was 23 points, 9 rebounds, but Jaime Jaquez, it was, 4 points, 4 turnovers in 32 minutes. Got to get, he's somebody that some people thought would be UCLA's best player this season, even better than Juzang, who was, a consensus preseason All-American. And he's good, a legitimate NBA prospect, but he was not good against Oregon. Juzang, we haven't talked about, like, as I was prepping this morning, and I realized I haven't even thought about Johnny Juzang in a month, maybe. We haven't talked about him because they were on that COVID pause and they haven't played, big games lately, and barely at all. Statistically, he's basically having the same season he had last season, averaging 16.6 points, 5 rebounds, points and rebounds slightly up, shooting percentages nearly identical. So if you wanted him to take a jump and be NCAA tournament Johnny Juzang from start to finish, that hasn't happened. But his third year in college looks, statistically a lot like his second year in college.
Yeah, I don't think at this point Johnny Juzang is near the All-American conversation, which is interesting. You mentioned his stats are basically flat year over year. Not great, not terrible, is what it is. But UCLA is going to have to probably win the Pac-12, and Juzang is going to have to be better to get into that conversation there overall. But we'll wait and see what happens in the next couple of games here for UCLA. I don't have a lot of concern. Oregon State next, then on the road, Utah, Colorado. We'll know UCLA is what it was billed to be in the preseason if it can peel off 3 in a row. There were 2 on the road. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's good enough, has the talent to do it. So we'll wait and see on that.